All right, so I won't be able to see what I'm presenting, but hopefully it goes well because I've rehearsed, right? Right, Alan? All right. Hope everyone's learning a lot. Thanks so much for the organizers, if they hear me on the camera, because I know they're busy, for inviting me to this talk. And I've heard a lot of great talks today, and I've learned a lot. So, generative AI is an unreliable information store. Super controversial title, got you in here, gets you going. And what did Kanye say? I forget how the song goes. All right. So yeah, I should have actually named it Generative AI in Production, the Hard Parts. And there's a reason why. Hopefully, oh God, this clicker's not, oh, darn it. My clicker's not working because it's not plugged in. All right, we're not going to use the clicker. We'll do it live. Someone got the reference. Oh, Bill O'Reilly. Uh, oh God, he's a punchline now. That's so sad. All right, so have you ever asked ChatGPT what it knows about you? Like ego surfed once or twice before, only to find out that you're dead? Well, that happened to me back in February when I first got access to ChatGPT, because that's what I do. I'm egocentric, so the first thing I do is ask it about myself. And it's not all bad, right? Because these things, these systems, I don't want to anthropomorphize, so I say these systems tend to hallucinate. We all know that. I call it confabulation. That's not caught on yet, but it will catch on someday. But as you're sort of using the system, you actually kind of need to understand the context and the subject matter and what you're talking about. And I know myself. I think I know myself pretty well. I think I'm alive. Please confirm. All of that is hilarious until you realize that the same technology is sort of lifted and shifted into the enterprise. And today, I'll introduce myself later, but every customer wants to integrate GenAI. They just want to productionize it. Most of them bump their head once or twice and they come to me. But lifting and shifting is never easy. Oh, that's right. See, I can't see what's on the screen, so this is kind of hard. But this is what it wrote. It had stuff. If you can't tell the colors, some things were true. A lot of things were not true. Very characteristic of misinformation or even state-driven disinformation, right? And so the notion that that would be integrated into Bing Chat at the time, this is back in February, was terrifying to me. It still actually is. But joke's on you, ChatGPT, because I'm still alive. I'm the director of product at Ventera Corporation. We deal with federal government. I know you said you worked for the federal government. I do not work for your agency. But we work with health agencies and geospatial agencies and name it. And they all want GenAI. I also personally consult through a company called Byte and Atom Research, where I don't work with the government. I work with mid-size enterprises, and they also rushing to integrate GenAI. And I'm the dream killer. I come in and I sort of start preaching the responsible AI stuff and data trust, and they roll their eyes and say, "Take my money, we need it." Because they know there's going to be a boom event. And if you've never heard that statement before, in the military, they have these boom events. What happens before the boom event, some catastrophic event, is what you plan for, so that when there is that inevitable boom, you're ready to sort of clean up the mess. And I normally am on the latter side, sorry, the former side of that. All right, so this work makes my heart sing. These tools are going to be ubiquitous, and I want to be a good ancestor for my kids, for you, for me, as we use these tools. I've spent way too much time on that intro. So at the end of this talk, hopefully, we can get through an opinion to take as to why these systems suck by themselves and what to do about them. And we are going to also talk about, I'm going to give you a brief field report as to how I see my customers using it and where they bump their heads a little bit. Okay? All right, and this is it, right? So these tools are super powerful. They're generally used for information retrieval, automation, and efficiency, content generation and recommendation. I do not see that screen. I only have bullet points here that I want to hit, so read the details. Some of these are a combination of these buckets, and the cost for an enterprise, right, to integrate these generative AI tools without considering factual accuracy, repeatability, so as that developer experience of being able to recreate something, like, you give it a system prompt, and what did I use again? Did we use a comma here? Consistency, right? So reliability. All of those factors are high enough to require guardrails, infrastructure, leaning on the shoulders of AWS or cloud to abstract all of that stuff for us. And we'll get into all of that. But before then, I'm going to give you the accelerated version as to why these things fail. Cut out a lot of slides that have 3 slides, but we're going to just boil it down to probability, knowledge gaps, and overfitting. Very briefly, these tools, these systems guess based on their training data. I call it spicy autocomplete. And the more compute, the more data, the more GPUs you throw at it, statistically, the better it comes at a type of cognition. It's seen so much sensible things over time that when it generates information or responses back to you, it's rewarded for being sensible, right? And so in the enterprise, we lean on the probability to generate human-seeming responses when we're sort of talking to our data or semantic search and that kind of stuff. But we're also looking for the strengths of generative AI for reasoning as well and integrating that into our tools. There's knowledge gap. If you ever used an OpenAI tool, they're very open about how their systems are cut off as of September 2021. And so if you ask it for what is an LLM, I guarantee, ask it right now. What is an LLM on ChatGPT? It won't know what it is, which is ironic because it was built off of ChatGPT. It also overfits. And put very simply, the models regurgitate the exact text they've seen during training. The previous speaker hinted at that. And if you don't watch out or mitigate those types of issues as you're going through your training, or if you have control over the training set, you might end up with Sarah Silverman coming at your door and asking to sue you because you've plagiarized her book. There's also security. I don't have that here because you've built your fancy demo and everybody can search everything, but then you realize, wait, no, everyone shouldn't be able to search everything because some things are proprietary. So we have things like ABAC, attribute-based access control, or RBAC, role-based access control mechanisms that we've been using for years, and that's something that we do. And so I hinted at, I'm going to bash GPT just to get you in the room, but I'm actually making money off of this thing, so this is the type of things that I do about it. Normally, my customers come to me and it's like, oh, yeah, we just added data. We gave some few-shot examples. We stored it in an index and this thing called vector database, and it was awesome. We served it with an API endpoint, and it didn't work like we thought because we tested for 99 things, and the 100th thing was not really anticipated. And you're always going to have that N+1 unanticipated thing that you have to test for. So how do you do it? I'm a consultant. So I use frameworks. Lots of ways to mitigate and rein in the craziness of these tools. This is mine. I sort of break down the areas where ChatGPT fails, or I'm going to say just generative AI fails, into 3 buckets. You've got your data input, You got your system I/O, and you got your product output. System input, system output. I'm just concatenating system I/O. Okay. And so with your data inputs, you look for things like, if you're, let's say, using RAG, retrieval augmented generation, which I'm going to showcase here in a second. You want to make sure that your data is clean because, garbage in, biased, toxic, and racist results out. No different from any other piece of software. So this is a really abbreviated version of this talk because I think I'm running out of time already. This is amazing. Many paths, again. One way is to go very, very complex and build your own pipeline, distributed transfer learning architecture, which is something that I brought to one of my customers. And it's pretty complicated looking. But the reason for that is the customer came to me and says, oh, hey, we saw your demo that you built for this thing, for this task, and we had the same task, so we cloned your repo. We sent you a donation for $20. And we ran into a problem. And I go, well, remember this data input, the system output, and the that thing. So we zoomed in to the data input. We realized very quickly that they may in their use case. By the way, this by no means asserts that you need this complexity. There's some pieces of it that are baselines, but that's for a later date. You've got your information store, hopefully reliable. You're using your Airflow DAG, and you're sort of pulling in things from your pipeline, and you're going through your normal checks. You got your feedback data, which is mostly just to give you that feedback loop, feedback loop. Basically, that flywheel of good feedback from actual users interacting with your tool. You've got your security and safety data. These are from logs from Splunk or some of your observability tools to make sure that your purple teams or red teams are augmented with the work that they need to do to make sure that you don't have a boom event down the line. Doing this, you've got tooling to help you version your data. So you've got DVC, data version control, or CI/CD systems in place. A lot of this stuff looks very familiar. A lot of this stuff may not. All right, so next. There we go. And so once that infrastructure that I just showed, that pipeline is a batch pipeline. You don't have to have it streaming. But for your consumer, right, it's another pipeline sometimes. This will be a streaming pipeline. And the pipeline will take shape of the type of task that you want. And so we're going to look at one of those. But before, there's some obvious drawbacks for the complexity that you add. The more complex you make things, the more costly it becomes. And I'm writing a book on data trust, which is like if you've ever looked up anything that I've written or any of my research, it's always about data trust, data privacy, data trust, data, LLMs just saying I'm dead, data trust. I don't trust it. So the complexities I've sort of broken up into this heat map where you have all the factors that may cause it. So you've got cost, cost and operational expense is the same. This data is wrong. ChatGPT created this, isn't it? So versioning, distributed. These are some of the techniques. So prompt engineering, retrieval augmented. Some of these things you've already sort of seen. I should have just used a tabular view of this. Try to be fancy. The second one is RAG, and this is one emergent way. It's not new. RAG has been around at least since 2019. At least in academia, and I've seen it in production once before. I had no idea what it was. And I think at this point, it's not 100% foolproof, but a great reliable way to help make these things more reliable. Made up of a couple components, right? There's a loader and a parser. So it's just you need to have a data source that needs to be indexed. You've got a loader and a parser, and then you can sort of use a vector database or whatever to sort of help you optimize that. Hello. And then you've got a retrieval algorithm, and this is normally like a seek-to-seek model, a sequence-to-sequence model that you would want to use. And to help orchestrate that, Alan Furstenberg, who's sitting right there, gave a talk about LangChain is one of those orchestrators or abstraction tools or software development kits, Alan, to help you do a lot of the grunt work. But in production, sometimes you may not want to. So I talked about how GPT claimed I was dead in the beginning. And so to give a demo, it took maybe a few hours worth of work to do this. So as one does when a chatbot denies you of your mortality, you build your own factual conversational agent. And we'll call it Roboto Noblato. Before I tell you how it works, I'm going to just get off time. This is really fun, guys. Let me put this thing down. I can't type and talk at the same time. Tell me about Noble Ackerson. I haven't done this search since February, so maybe it learned.
We're not seeing anything.
Oh, God. Of course. So I asked it. It's being a little factual. It says it stopped at 2021. Okay, so someone at OpenAI heard my talk and decided to sanitize it. But believe me when I say, I've searched this in Claude and the Llama 2 chatbot examples, and it still hallucinates very wildly. And so what I did was, oh yeah, there it is. What I did was create this thing, and it's basically a way to sort of give factual information. So we're going to say, tell me about Noble Ackerson. Hopefully it works. And please, it has my personally identifiable information. Please do not, this is my personal agent, do not go to this website. Do not ask it what I had for lunch. So now it actually gets factual information. It was like, he talks a lot about the 3 C's of privacy. What are those? And then, so basically, it's indexing on a bunch of different data sources, but essentially anything that makes my heart sing, anything about me, my resume. I actually found it interesting that, it says like 3 C's of privacy. He talks about our context, control, and choice. And I actually do have a couple full talks on that subject. So this is a plug for my YouTube. Go see my previous talks. So yeah, you can see that thing and then what it does now. To do that, this is going to be really tough. So I'm going to have to sort of come over here. Again, there are 2 main components of any RAG system. You've got the retriever, right? And you've got the generator, right? Retrieval, augmented generation. Audio, I've been told. All right, so really, really quick, the RAG retriever acts as a knowledge broker of sorts. It fetches relevant documents that contain potential answers to the input or to whatever is queried or whatever the user wants to know. And so in the enterprise, we use this consider like an enterprise health provider that has a database of thousands of medical journals. If the user asks, what are the side effects of drug XYZ, RAG Retriever sifts through those journals and finds relevant information. And this is timeliness and the relevance of these types of systems are super important, especially for some enterprise contexts. And so you can sort of see why the retriever is important. Another piece is the generation part. All right, so imagine like in a supply chain sort of situation, a user might ask, how can I optimize logistics? RAG sequence for generation, which is the difference between that first slide and this slide of just sort of, I'm pulling another one from Llama Index, which is kind of like one of those LangChain-like orchestrators. I'm wrapping it up, lady. Thank you. We use that to sort of generate concise, and this is where the strength of the LLM comes in. And so one demo that I normally do in that Noblato Roboto bot, I need a new name, is to ask it to introduce me for these types of talks and in a form of a haiku or a poem or something like that. And I've never written any content like that before. All right. If you recall, I teased the distributed transfer learning component earlier. You don't have to use that. Fine tuning does not teach your models new knowledge. They just teach them new skills and new tasks. That's one key thing to take away from this. But if you want to, you can actually fine tune your RAG pipeline, your RAG data set on an LLM, a large language model as well, to get more refined results. There are drawbacks, right? There's latency, there's data quality, complexity, costs, and I talked about the security risks as well, and so I'll just leave that there. So we've gone through, ways that I look at helping my customers sort of mitigate it. They fall under your data input, your system I/O, and your product output. And those are the various components of that. Take a picture quickly. I'm about to go to the next slide. I got to finish. I'll make these slides available, I promise. All right, so there's a whole section of this on prompt engineering, and I go philosophical and talk about, the cooperative principle, which is by a linguist, Paul Grice. And so just look into that. Type in Paul Grice and his maxims of conversating with these tools. Yeah, you got the. There you go. So yes, definitely look into Paul Grice to help you sort of construct prompts that are quality, quantity, have the right relevance for the LLM, and the right manner, or at least the clarity of them. And with that, I think I'll pass it on to the next speaker. Thank you so much.